Every time you step toward your dream, someone's going to have something to say. They'll laugh, they'll doubt, they'll point fingers, and if you're not careful, you'll start believing them. But here's the truth. They don't matter. They don't live your life, they don't carry your burdens, and they don't pay the price for your future. So why in the world should their opinions decide your destiny? Think about this. How many dreams have died not because the person wasn't capable, but because they cared too much about what other people thought? The graveyard is full of talent buried under opinions, full of ideas that never saw daylight because someone was afraid of being judged. And here's the shift. When you finally stop caring what they think, that's the exact moment you start winning. Everywhere you look, you'll find critics. They're not rare, they're everywhere. But here's the thing, the people with the loudest opinions are almost always the ones doing the least. Think about it. The ones who are truly in the fight, the ones who are building, struggling, creating, and grinding, they don't have time to sit around judging everyone else. They're too busy trying to win. The ones who scream the loudest from the sidelines are almost always the ones who gave up on themselves a long time ago. That's why their words feel sharp. Not because they're right, but because they're secretly angry that you're doing what they didn't have the courage to do. Look around. You'll notice it in every area of life. The person who never started a business has the most to say about why yours won't work. The one who quit the gym 6 months ago is the first to mock your routine. The one who's in debt will give you financial advice. Why? Because it's easier for them to criticize than to look in the mirror and admit they tapped out. And if you're not careful, you'll let their bitterness plant seeds of doubt inside you. Here's the reality. Critics don't count. The scoreboard never lies. Results speak louder than opinions, and when the game is over, nobody remembers the hecklers in the crowd. They only remember who stood on the podium at the end. People waste so much of their potential because they forget this truth. They get caught up fighting battles that don't matter. They defend themselves against every voice, every comment, every whisper. But you don't win by defending. You win by building, by moving forward, by stacking real proof of progress so high that no opinion can argue against it. Do you want to know why critics have such an impact? Because deep down you fear they might be right. That's the only reason it stings. If you were secure, if you were locked in, if you knew without question that you were on the right path, their words would slide off you like rain on glass. But the moment you let them make you pause, you've already given them more credit than they deserve. And let me remind you, they haven't earned that power. They didn't sacrifice for your dream. They didn't put in the hours. They didn't bleed for it. They don't get a vote. There's a reason champions say things like, "I don't hear the noise." Because the noise never stops. It only gets louder the closer you get to winning. The critics multiply when you start making progress. They sense momentum, and it threatens them, so they turn up the volume. That's the moment where most people crack. They let the weight of other people's voices push them off track. But that's exactly when you need to harden your focus. Critics are like shadows. They follow you only because you're standing in the light. You've got to ask yourself this. 10 years from now, will the people who criticized you even matter? Will they be at your table? Will they be writing the checks? Will they be standing on the stage when you accept your win? No. They'll still be in the cheap seats, watching someone else take the risks they never dared to take. And when you realize that, you see how irrelevant they really are. So stop giving critics credit they haven't earned. They don't count. The ones who matter are the ones in the trenches with you. The ones who are actually building, sacrificing, and risking. Everyone else, just noise. And you don't stop a train to argue with barking dogs. You keep moving. Because at the end of the day, history remembers the builders, the doers, the winners, not the critics. When you let other people's opinions control you, you don't just lose once, you lose twice. The first loss is obvious. You quit on yourself. You stop chasing the thing you actually wanted. You put down the dream you once carried because somebody else convinced you it wasn't worth it, or worse, that you weren't worth it. That's the first death. Your dream dies in your hands before it even has a chance to breathe. But the second loss is far more painful. It's when you start living under their approval. You adjust your choices, not because it's right for you, but because you want their validation. You're no longer building the life you want. You're building the life you think will please them. And the sick truth? They still won't be satisfied. The critics who told you don't do it will be the same ones saying you should have done it differently. So now you've lost your dream and your freedom. That's what I mean when I say you lose twice. Think about it. Every time you listen to someone who doesn't matter, you hand over control of your life. You become a puppet, dancing to the strings of people who have nothing invested in your success. They don't pay your bills. They don't wake up with your responsibilities. They don't sacrifice with you. Yet somehow you let their casual words, their half-baked opinions, and their unproven judgments dictate how far you'll go. That's insanity. It's like letting a backseat passenger grab the steering wheel while you're driving 80 miles an hour down the freeway. You crash, and they walk away unharmed. Here's what makes it even worse. When you quit because of them, they don't care. They don't applaud your wisdom for giving up. They don't say, "Wow, I'm glad you listened to me." They move on. And you're the one left carrying the regret. You're the one lying awake at night, wondering what could have happened if you had just stayed the course. That regret eats at you. It whispers, "Maybe I could have made it. Maybe I could have been more." And now you've lost twice, once in action and once in spirit. You have to understand that people project their own fears onto you. When someone tells you that won't work, what they're really saying is, "I'm too scared to try." When someone says, "You're wasting your time," what they mean is, "I don't value persistence because I've already given up." And when you buy into their fear, you inherit their limitations. You take on their ceiling.
their doubts, their failures, and you wear them like a badge that was never meant to be yours. The people who win are the ones who learn how to separate feedback from fear. Feedback from someone who's done what you're trying to do, that's valuable. Fear from someone who's never even tried, that's poison. But most people don't make the distinction. They lump all opinions together and then wonder why they feel stuck. Here's the truth. Every time you stop moving forward because of what someone else thinks, you betray yourself. You bury your potential alive, and every time you betray yourself, you reinforce the idea that other people's voices matter more than your own. That's not just losing, it's self-destruction. So you've got to make a decision. Either you live once on your own terms and deal with the wins and losses that come with your choices, or you live twice, losing to them and losing to yourself. One of those paths builds freedom, the other builds chains. At the end of the day, which pain do you want? The pain of pushing through their opinions, or the pain of knowing you never tried because you cared too much? One hurts now, the other hurts forever. And I promise you the weight of regret is far heavier than the weight of criticism. Don't lose twice. Winning isn't a team sport at the beginning. It's lonely, it's long, it's uncomfortable, and that's why most people never taste it. They think success looks like applause, like constant support, like people cheering them on every step of the way. But the truth is, when you're really building something worthwhile, most of the journey is silence. It's you alone, grinding in the dark while everyone else is asleep. It's you doing reps no one will ever see, making sacrifices no one will ever know about, and walking a road nobody else understands. That's what makes isolation so powerful. It strips away the need for approval. It forces you to find fuel within yourself. Because when you're by yourself, there's nobody to clap for you, nobody to reassure you, nobody to pat you on the back. You have to become your own source of energy. And if you can't do that, you won't last. That's why isolation is a filter. It separates the ones who want to look successful from the ones who will actually become successful. People hate isolation because it feels like rejection. They think, if I'm on the right track, shouldn't people be supporting me? No. If you're on the right track, you'll usually be misunderstood. You'll look crazy to your friends. You'll look obsessive to your family. You'll look like you've lost your mind to people who don't have your vision. That's the price. If you can't handle being misunderstood, you'll never make it. Because winning doesn't come with universal approval. It comes with distance. Distance from the average. Distance from the familiar. Distance from the comfortable. Think about every champion, every innovator, every game changer you admire. Do you think they were surrounded by constant praise when they were building? Absolutely not. They were called reckless, unrealistic, delusional. They were told to be more practical. They were told to slow down. But while everyone else was talking, they kept building in isolation. And when they finally emerged with proof, with results, with undeniable wins, the same people who doubted them flipped their narrative and said, "I always knew they'd make it." That's the irony of isolation. When you finally break through, the crowd rushes back in to celebrate the thing they once mocked. You have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with disappearing for a while, with putting your head down and letting people talk, with skipping the parties, missing the vacations, and stepping away from the noise. Because in the silence of isolation is where you sharpen your edge. It's where you build habits that others won't. It's where you gain skills, discipline, and focus that the majority will never have because they're too distracted chasing approval. Isolation is not punishment. It's preparation. Think about it like training camp. Athletes go away, cut off from the world, locked into the grind. Why? So that when it's time to perform, they're unstoppable. Life works the same way. If you want to be unstoppable, you've got to be willing to go through your own training camp, your own season of isolation, where you cut out the distractions and focus only on the mission. The danger is, most people can't sit with themselves long enough. They need constant noise. They need constant validation. They need to be seen, liked, and approved. That's why they never build anything worth remembering. They live off crumbs of approval instead of building their own table. So don't fear isolation. Embrace it. When people leave, let them. When people doubt, let them. When people stop calling, let them. That silence is the sound of you getting sharper, stronger, and closer to winning. And when you finally emerge from it, you'll be so far ahead that the same people who walked away won't even recognize you. That's why winning requires isolation. Because if you can't handle walking alone, you'll never make it to the place where others finally wish they had walked with you. One of the biggest traps people fall into is believing that approval equals success. It doesn't. Approval is free. Success is expensive. Anybody can get approval. Post a picture. Tell people what they want to hear. Fit in. Play safe. Boom. You'll get likes, claps, and little dopamine hits that make you feel important. But none of that puts money in your pocket. None of that builds a business. None of that turns your dream into reality. Approval is just noise. It's empty calories for your soul. It feels good in the moment, but it leaves you weak and starving when it comes time to actually deliver. Success, on the other hand, costs you something. It costs time. It costs energy. It costs sacrifice. It demands that you do things people won't understand. It demands that you keep showing up long after the applause has died. And here's the kicker. While you're in the middle of paying that price, you usually don't get approval. In fact, you often get the opposite. Criticism, doubt, silence. That's why most people stop. They can't handle the season where they're giving everything and getting no approval in return. They confuse the absence of applause with the absence of progress. But ask yourself, who are you really trying to impress? The crowd, your neighbors, your family, or the person you see in the mirror every morning. Because here's the truth, the crowd changes its mind daily. One minute they love you, the next minute they cancel you. If your success is built on their approval, you're standing on quicksand. You can't build anything lasting on top of shifting opinions. But if your success is built on principles, discipline, and proof, you become untouchable. Look at history. The people who made the biggest impact were rarely approved of in the beginning. Innovators were called crazy, leaders were called arrogant, builders were called reckless. But the moment their vision became reality, the same voices that once mocked them started praising them. That shows you something. Approval doesn't predict success, results do. And most of the time, approval only shows up after success is already undeniable. You've got to decide which currency you want to chase. Approval is cheap, but it makes you poor. Success is expensive, but it makes you free. If you chase approval, you'll always bend, compromise, and settle. You'll do what makes people happy instead of what makes you great. But if you chase success, you'll take the hits, endure the seasons of being misunderstood, and keep moving forward because you know the payoff is worth it. And here's another thing. The people giving you their approval aren't paying your price. They don't feel the pain of your grind. They don't lose the sleep you're losing. They don't carry the weight you're carrying. So why should their claps or their criticism determine your next move? They didn't earn that right. Only you live with the consequences of your choices, so only you should decide which ones are worth making. You'll notice something powerful once you stop chasing approval. You get more of it. Because the truth is, people admire results. They might criticize you on the way up, but once you win, they'll rush to applaud you. And by then, their approval won't even matter, because you'll already know who you are, and you'll already have the results to back it up. Approval isn't success. Approval is borrowed. Success is owned. And the people who win are the ones who stop begging for claps and start building results. You don't get remembered for how many people liked you. You get remembered for what you built, what you gave, what you achieved. And that's something no amount of approval can ever replace. One of the strangest patterns you'll ever see in life is how quickly the crowd changes its tune. At first, they doubt you, they mock you, they laugh behind your back, they tell you all the reasons why what you're chasing will never work. But the second you win, the second you prove them wrong with results, they flip. Suddenly the same people who told you to quit will swear they always believed in you. That's not loyalty, it's hypocrisy. But it's also reality. That's how the crowd works. You have to understand this early so you don't waste energy trying to win them over. The crowd doesn't believe in you until the scoreboard forces them to. Until then, you'll be the punchline, the outsider, the dreamer who doesn't get it. And that's fine. Because the truth is, the crowd's opinion doesn't decide the outcome, your actions do. Think about every person who ever did something remarkable. At first, they were ridiculed. Edison was told the light bulb was impossible. Walt Disney was told he had no imagination. Elon Musk was told rockets couldn't be reusable. Every single one of them had a crowd telling them to quit, to stop embarrassing themselves, to be more realistic. And yet the moment they succeeded, the entire narrative flipped. Those same critics suddenly started praising them as visionaries, geniuses, pioneers. What changed? Not the crowd, just the scoreboard. That's why you can't play for their approval in the beginning. If you let their doubt weigh you down, you'll never get far enough to reach the point where they flip. The crowd only respects results. That's the game. They don't care about effort, sacrifice, or good intentions. They care about outcomes. So stop trying to convince them with words and start convincing them with proof. Here's the funny part. When you finally win, they'll pretend they were always on your side. They'll rewrite history. They'll say, "I knew you'd make it," even though you remember clearly that they told you to quit. They'll say, "I always believed in you," even though you know they laughed behind your back. That's the crowd. They'll always align themselves with winners after the fact because nobody wants to admit they were wrong. So what does that mean for you? It means you can't measure your progress by their cheers. If you do, you'll quit too early. You've got to measure your progress by your own scoreboard, the reps you've put in, the skills you've built, the obstacles you've overcome. Because the truth is, their opinion will always be temporary, but your results will be permanent. Another thing you've got to remember is this. Some people in the crowd don't even want you to win. They only cheer for you once it's safe, once you've already proven yourself, because then they get to share in the glow of your success without ever having risked anything themselves. They don't want to believe while you're building, because that would force them to confront their own lack of effort. So instead, they stand back, arms crossed, waiting for you to either fail or finally win so they can jump on the bandwagon. Don't waste your breath explaining yourself to people like that. Let them doubt, let them laugh, let them stay on the sidelines. The only way to silence them is to do exactly what they said you couldn't. And when you finally do it, don't even waste energy rubbing it in their faces. Just keep moving, keep building, keep winning, because the ultimate revenge against doubt is undeniable success. The crowd will always flip later. That's not a reason to hate them. It's a reason to ignore them. Let them cheer when they cheer. Let them doubt when they doubt. Neither one matters. What matters is that you stayed the course long enough to reach the point where the results spoke louder than the noise. And here's the final truth. If you can endure their doubt, you'll earn their respect. But if you quit to win their approval, you'll never have either. So stop worrying about when the crowd will flip and focus on doing the work that forces them to. Because at the end of the day, they can flip all they want, but the scoreboard only changes because you refuse to. At the end of the day, opinions don't build legacies, outcomes do. You don't get remembered for what people thought about you. You get remembered for what you actually did. The problem is, most people spend their lives chasing approval instead of chasing results. They think if they can just get everyone to like them, then somehow they'll feel successful. But here's the brutal truth. Likes don't pay the bills, claps don't change your circumstances, and applause doesn't build empires. Only outcomes do. When you put opinions at the center of your decision-making, you're guaranteeing failure. Why? Because opinions change constantly. One day they love you, the next day they hate you. If you tie your identity to their voices, you'll spend your whole life swinging back and forth like a pendulum, never grounded, never certain, never focused. But when you tie yourself to outcomes, real measurable results, you've got something solid to stand on. You've got proof. And proof always silences noise. Think about this. Nobody argues with the person who wins. They might doubt them on the way up, but the moment the scoreboard says winner, the conversation ends. The outcome is undeniable. That's why your job is not to convince, not to argue, not to explain. Your job is to win, to create results so loud that nobody can talk over them, to put points on the board so big that no one can ignore them. That's where your energy should go. Most people waste too much energy defending themselves. They argue in comment sections. They explain themselves to family. They rehearse speeches in their heads about why they're doing what they're doing. And all of that is wasted motion. Every minute you spend trying to manage opinions is a minute you could have spent creating outcomes. And when the outcome shows up, it does the talking for you. You don't have to argue when you've already won. This is why discipline matters so much. Because outcomes aren't built overnight. They're built brick by brick, day by day, through consistent action. And during that process, you'll be flooded with opinions. People will tell you you're wasting your time. They'll say you're obsessed. They'll say you should live a little. That's when you have to remember. They're focused on today, but you're focused on the outcome. You're playing the long game. You're stacking proof while they're stacking excuses. Outcomes don't care about feelings. Outcomes don't care about whether people thought you were smart, funny, talented, or impressive. Outcomes care about execution. Did you do the work? Did you stay consistent? Did you push through the days when nobody was watching? That's what determines whether you win or lose. And when you lock in on that, opinions fade into background noise. There's something liberating about shifting your focus. When you stop caring what people think and only care about what you're producing, your decisions get sharper. You stop wasting time. You stop hesitating. You stop explaining yourself. You just move, execute, and adjust. And ironically, that's when the respect you wanted all along starts to show up, because people respect results, even if they don't respect the process. Here's the reality. The world doesn't hand out trophies for being liked. It hands out trophies for being effective. Nobody remembers who had the most approval on the way up. They remember who stood on the stage at the end. And that's why you've got to shift your focus from opinions to outcomes. Because when it's all said and done, nobody can deny the scoreboard. So ask yourself, do you want to spend your life chasing the fleeting comfort of approval, or do you want to create the permanent proof of results? One fades as fast as it shows up. The other lasts forever. And the ones who win are the ones who choose the outcome every single time. So when they talk, let them talk. When they laugh, let them laugh. When they doubt, let them doubt. None of it matters. Because at the end of the day, the scoreboard doesn't lie. The results don't lie. And when the dust settles, they'll be forced to watch you stand on the podium. So say it with me. Who cares what they think? I will win.